Welcome back. Our president asked, what does Kofifi mean? Our viewers flooding our email. Aletta emailing, this is why the Dems are so jealous. One word from President Trump has the entire country talking. And Ainsley? And
Mary says, watching Fox and Friends and enjoying my morning
Kofifi or Kofefi?
Fifi.
I don't know. Whatever you want it to be.
After the show.
Thank you, guys. We got a lot of breaking news here now. Another day and another horrific terror attack. At least 80 are dead, more than 360 injured in what is considered a highly secure area in Kabul, Afghanistan. There are several Western embassies in that area. Security remains on high alert. It is Ramadan. No claim yet of responsibility. More details as we learn them minutes away from That's Inside of America's Newsroom. First, though, there is more breaking news from the White House. Moments ago, Fox News confirms President Trump is expected to take the United States government out of the Paris Climate Agreement. A lot of this has to do with jobs and the economy and so much more. Let's get after it. It's Wednesday. I'm Bill Hemmer, and welcome here to America's Newsroom. How you doing, Shannon?
Good to see you this morning. I'm Shannon Bream. It is a busy morning at the White House already. As we mentioned, President Trump had said he would have an answer this week on that Paris deal. And now we know, days after returning from his overseas trip, he is expected to withdraw the U.S. from that agreement.
Also, there is this today. The president is going after Democrats over what he calls a witch hunt into a one-time campaign aide, Carter Page.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts joins us now live on a busy morning from the White House. All right, John, start first, though, with what we know about the Paris climate deal. Breaking news.
Shannon, Bill, good morning to you. I ran into a senior administration official, very senior administration official in the halls of the White House just a few minutes ago, who cautions me that the president has not yet made the final decision and is still weighing options. But two sources, aside from that person, have told us that the president is expected to announce as soon as today that the United States will withdraw from the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. You're looking at pictures here from the president's meetings last week in Europe, where he met with G7 leaders. He also met with the 28 member nations, or the other 27 member nations of NATO. We were told by his chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, that he had been listening very intently to these leaders, to their concerns about the Paris Climate Accord, why it is important to them. He suggested at one point that the president's thinking on this whole issue was evolving. But there are a lot of pressures here at home for the president to pull out, because to adhere strictly to the protocols of the Paris Climate Accord, the president believes would put an undue economic burden on the United States and threaten that we would begin to fall behind countries like China and India in terms of manufacturing and job creation. There are two factions here at the White House. One faction believes that while it's complicated to get out, it would be complicated to stay in, and that the United States needs to withdraw. Then there is another faction that thinks that the United States would be better to stay in the Paris Accord. At this moment, Shannon, it looks like the faction that would have the United States leave the Paris Accord is leading the charge here. Again, we're told no final decision on the part of the president, but we're also told that he is leaning heavily in that direction. You know, we always said during the transition that this is what he's decided, but he could always change his mind. I think that's where we are right now.
All right, and he often does. All right, John, thank you for an update on that. Now let's turn to Twitter. The president is very active this morning. What's on his mind?
Well, the president is infuriated, first of all, by that photo that was released over the weekend of Kathy Griffin holding a mock severed head of President Trump. The president tweeting out this morning, quote, "Kathy Griffin should be ashamed of herself. My children, especially my 11-year-old son, Barron, are having a hard time with this. Sick!" exclamation point. The president is also taking aim at a request from Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee to postpone indefinitely testimony from Carter Page, who once sat on the Trump Campaign Advisory Committee. Page was identified in that unverified Russian dossier as the Trump campaign's point of contact with Russia. And certainly he did travel to Russia at least a couple of times during the election campaign. Page insists that he has evidence that James Comey, the former director of the FBI, and John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, and others provided false testimony in their appearances on Capitol Hill. Page says that he has evidence to the contrary, though he is not saying what those falsehoods are. In a letter that Fox News obtained that Page wrote to the House Intelligence Committee, he says, quote, "In the interest of finally providing the American people with some accurate information at long last, I hope that we can proceed with this straight dialogue soon." The president jumping on that notion this morning, tweeting out, quote, "So now it is reported that the Democrats who have excoriated Carter Page about Russia don't want him to testify. He blows away their case against him and now wants to clear his name by showing the false or misleading testimony by James Comey, John Brennan." Witch hunt. What's really interesting, though, Shannon, about this tweet is that for months we have been told at every turn by White House aides that Carter Page was never a part of this campaign, never advised the president, sat briefly on an advisory panel, and really didn't have anything whatsoever to do with the campaign. And now the president is out there promoting his testimony on Capitol Hill. Interesting times we live in. Shannon?
Every day a new twist. All right, John Roberts live for us at the White House. Thank you.
So a ton to analyze yet again. On the couch this morning, here he is, Chris Direwalt. Start calling you the doctor. Talk about the climate deal from the following perspective. As a candidate, Trump said it's a job killer. He would get out of it. And there was a lot of push and pull on each side. And it appears he's made up his mind, at least now.
Well, the people in the business community, a lot of people in the business community, take the point of view that the United States should do with the Paris climate deal what other countries do, what some other countries do, and ignore it. Stay in it, and then say, but we can't make the things that we said we were going to make, and these were too ambitious, and we're going to scale that back. So you stay in it, and you water it down, so that way you get a seat at the table, you're still part of the discussion. Once the United States pulls out, once we leave, then the rest of the world goes off on its own hook, and the United States is over here. The business community, of course, is worried that eventually when a Democrat becomes president again, what happens in terms of the consequences later are much steeper. But this is something for Donald Trump's base, something that shows him as a man of action, shows him engaged, and shows him doing a big thing that will anger Europeans, and angering Europeans is something that his base likes.
He would also come out and say he kept his word because that's what he campaigned on. I think the sides are very interesting. You've got foreign leaders on one side with American CEOs teaming up to stay in the agreement. Steve Bannon and people like Senator Ted Cruz saying to get out of it. And Ted Cruz penned a piece just this week saying it would obliterate $3 trillion of GDP. Now, I believe this is a President Trump now talking to people in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan, Ohio, etc.
Right. Whether this is a real agreement, an enforceable agreement or not, as you say, if it's Donald Trump against big business and elites and global elites, that is exactly the kind of thing that fires up his base at a time that he needs them a great deal. And so from a political necessity point of view, even if it's not the thing that the business community wants or that they want to do, it is something that he may feel the political necessity at this moment to do.
We are waiting for more language on that. So stand by. We'll read the words very carefully when they come out. Another topic now. You wrote a piece, with this Jared Kushner deal and the Carter Page story that Shannon and John Roberts were just detailing. You wrote a piece yesterday called "Whom Will Trump Trust?" Now, what is the angle of your direction to understand inside the West Wing how small that circle may be getting? What's your view on that?
Well, at some point, sooner or later, Trump has to decide who are the people in his administration that he will trust and empower and give them the opportunity to succeed. Because right now everybody's set up for failure. Because if you make a mistake, if you have a problem, as Jared Kushner now does, then the other crabs in the pot can pull you back down to the bottom of the bucket and somebody else takes their turn at the top. The way that successful administrations always work, and the president should either empower his chief of staff, Reince Priebus, or find a new chief of staff that he will empower and say, you're running the administration of this government on a day-to-day basis. You are really the chief operating officer. I'll make the big decisions as they come by, but you're going to run this on a day-to-day, and you're going to be really the chief of staff. Until the president's ready to do that, none of this matters because it's just going to continue to be this swirling cyclone of chaos.
Chris, thank you. More coming up with you a bit later, okay? Chris Direwalt, thank you there in D.C., and more to get to in a moment. 8 past the hour now.
And another big story this morning. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn will hand over some documents to the Senate Intelligence Committee as early as next week. It's part of the committee's investigation into Russia's involvement in the 2016 election. It comes, this latest twist, after Flynn's attorney said he would decline a subpoena and invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. Well, the Senate panel also issued 2 subpoenas to Flynn's businesses, and once those were narrowed, Flynn in return agreed to turn over some documents related to both the businesses and some some personal materials. We'll have more details on this with a live report ahead on America's Newsroom. And of course, that comes after a lot of chatter about whether he was trying to get an immunity deal, whether lawmakers would be interested in talking to him.
Listen, we all want to know what the truth is, right? And it seems like it's a long way off right now. And Democrats are clawing at this issue day after day. So when Robert Mueller is prepared to present his evidence, we'll know a lot more.
Patience is a virtue.
We shall see then. That's right. In the meantime, we've got this big story here. Nuclear tip missiles headed for the United States, a top priority for President Trump and this administration. The Pentagon just tested a system designed to shoot down ICBMs from the sky. Was this one a success? We'll talk about that in a moment here.
And you remember this, chaos at the Texas state capitol, massive protests, scuffling, shoving lawmakers, the state moving toward a full ban on sanctuary cities. So what comes next? Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick joins us live to talk about that coming up.
Also, Sean Spicer back in the briefing room after 2 weeks, trip overseas, ready to take on reporters and defend his boss. What he said is the source of our fair and balanced debate today.
He's very pleased with the work of his staff. I think that he is frustrated, like I am and like so many others, to see stories come out that are patently false, to see narrative wrong, to see quote-unquote fake news.
Tweets coming in from the president just minutes ago. The first one, I will be announcing my decision on the Paris Accord over the next few days. Make America great again. Of course, we've had reporting from John Roberts just minutes ago that two sources tell him it is expected the president will pull out of that deal. So we'll wait and see what officially happens. Also, this tweet, hopefully Republican senators, good people all, can quickly get together and pass a new repeal and replace health care bill and saved dollars. And that, of course, comes after the call yesterday to blow up the legislative process there.
To go to 51 votes.
To go to 51
and there's some
votes.
debating that, too. With regard to the climate deal, you just wonder after a 9-day trip overseas what the posture was of foreign leaders in these conversations. So that may come out a bit later today also. So stand by waiting for word on that. This now from Austin, Texas.
He walked back and told us, I called ICE. And we both, what? What do you mean? You did what? He said, yeah, I called ICE. And then he said, F them.
You say things to incite people, okay? And that's exactly what I did.
So there you have a Democrat and then a Republican lawmaker out of Texas explaining what set off this confrontation at the State House. The scuffle happened 2 days ago on Monday over illegal immigration. Protests erupting over the Governor Greg Abbott's new law that cracks down on sanctuary cities. That law goes into effect on the 1st of September. Here to explain all of this now, the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick. And, sir, good morning to you. And thank you for your time. Tell us why this law was even necessary.
Well, Bill, in Texas alone, these are just our statistics, not national, Texas statistics. We arrested over 210,000 criminal aliens from 2011 until the beginning of this year. We charged them with over 500,000 crimes, Bill, over 1,000 murders, 6,000 sexual assaults, 67,000 drug crimes, hundreds of kidnappings. These are real crimes committed by people here illegally. Of those criminal aliens, almost 2/3 were here illegally. So, Bill, sanctuary cities do not make us safer. It's real crime connected to people who are here illegally. And when you have a sheriff like we have in Austin saying,
I got it. Let me come back to Travis County in a moment here.
Yes.
What does the law do in Texas?
What the law says is, first of all, that local law enforcement has to cooperate with ICE. If there's a detainer asked, they must hold those people on the detainer. Here in Travis County, Sally Hernandez, who ran on Sanctuary Hernandez in her campaign that she would let people out, including criminals, was not following federal law. Secondly, it says that no local official, like a mayor or any elected official or police chief, can tell their police or deputies on the street that they can ignore federal law. If they want to ask for the identification in terms of citizenship upon a legal detention, they can ask that. That's what's been happening across our country, Bill. Mayors, and we've seen them all around the country, who are going to defy Donald Trump, but for years they've been defying federal law. They've been telling their police, don't ask. These are real criminals, Bill, hurting real American citizens. And we have to
let me just get to a few more questions here. What if you mentioned Austin, Travis County.
Yes.
What if they do not cooperate with state law? What would the state then do?
First of all, the jurisdictions could be fined, but those who are ignoring state law, which would be ignoring federal law, they could find themselves in jail themselves.
So you lock
this
them
is
up.
a serious issue. Yes.
There will be a court challenge before this goes into effect. Can you win that court challenge?
I've been involved in the legislature now over a decade, and every time we pass good conservative legislation, as we do in Texas, the left always takes us to court. We win almost all of the time. So I believe that this law is surely constitutional. We have a right to protect our citizens, and we really led the nation. When Trump called for the end of sanctuary cities, the Senate, which I'm president over, passed that bill in February. It finally passed to the governor's desk recently, and he signed it. And so we're leading the nation on this, and we want other states to follow us. You have to realize, Bill, we're a border state, but every sheriff in the country is a border sheriff because these people who are committing crimes across our border illegally are in every state in the country.
Now, I understand the case you're making. You mentioned Austin. Is it just Austin? I mean, you got a big state in Texas.
Yeah, we've had issues with Houston, we've had issues with Dallas, we've had issues with other cities. But I want to go back to those stats, Bill. Imagine 500,000 crimes that have been committed by people who have come here illegally over the last 5 to 6 years, that you could wipe those off the books. Those people who weren't killed, those women who weren't sexually assaulted, the drug crimes that weren't held, all the cost to society, the cost to the victims, we have to clean this up. And the idea that sanctuary cities make us safer by welcoming people is just nonsense.
One last point here. The critics say this will weaken the relationship between the residents of said city and the local police. You've heard that. What do you think about that?
I think it's the argument the left makes because they have no other argument. Because what could they say? It's okay for criminals to come to our country.
Is it not true that the relationship with police is not weaker because of it?
We'll find out. I don't believe that to be the case. I have no data to show that that would be the case. I think what will happen, Bill, we're seeing it, even though we don't have a wall yet, just the position that the president has taken and Texas has taken has dramatically drop the people coming across the border, whether they're criminals coming across the border or people coming for a better life and a job. We've had a dramatic impact, and the people crossing the border is down significantly. I believe our crime stats are going to continue to lower because those people who are coming here to commit crimes are not coming across the border. We've made a significant inroad the last 6 months since Trump became president on this issue, and since Texas has taken a strong stand.
Thank you, sir, for your time. That's Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor there in Texas. 3 months before it goes into effect, sir. We will follow it from here. Thank you for your time. Shannon.
Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, GOP lawmakers ready to take a stand to try to stop illegal immigrants from hurting U.S. citizens. We're going to tell you about the latest push to make Kate's Law a reality for this country and to deliver on one of President Trump's biggest campaign promises. Also, that man accused of stabbing 2 heroes to death, 2 good Samaritans. That man is in court and speaking out still.
Free speech or die, Portland. You got no safe place. This is America. Get out if you don't like free speech.
This is a Fox News alert. The Pentagon successfully intercepting a mock warhead over the Pacific Ocean amid accelerated missile development in North Korea. The test demonstrating the ability to take down a missile headed to the U.S. Jonathan Hunt covered it live. He's now live at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. So it sounds like they are celebrating success this morning, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think everybody at the Pentagon very pleased with what happened yesterday, but I think the sound you hear is not exactly celebration, but huge sighs of relief coming from officials at the Missile Defense Agency. As the interceptor missile was launched from Vandenberg here yesterday, there was a huge amount of pressure on the MDA to make sure this was a success. Remember what they were doing, and we showed you this animation yesterday. An ICBM similar to the kind that North Korea is trying to develop was launched by the U.S. out of the Marshall Islands in the Pacific. Then the interceptor was launched from here at Vandenberg, and it successfully, as it turned out, hit that ICBM hundreds of miles up in space over the Pacific Ocean. It was not easy to do, and Vice Admiral James Searing, who is director of the Missile Defense Agency, said in a post-test statement yesterday, quote, "This system is vitally important to the defense of our homeland, and this test demonstrates that we have a capable, credible deterrent against a very real threat. I am incredibly proud of the war fighters who executed this test and who operate this system every day." And nobody knows better than Admiral Searing, Shannon, that one day this might not be a test. It may be the very real thing. Shannon?
Very true. Better to get it all ironed out now. So do we know if the system is going to be expanded?
Yeah, it is. There are currently 36 of these interceptor missiles in the United States, 4 of them here at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, 32 of them up in Fort Greely, Alaska. We were given exclusive access to the missile fields there and the silos, 70-foot deep silos in which the 54-foot-long missiles are kept. There will be 8 more across the nation, 4 more of those up at Fort Greely by the end of this year. The crews are on standby there 24/7, 365 days a year, simulating all kinds of potential attacks against the United States so that they are ready to react if and when that kind of attack comes. And they know better than anyone, Shannon, that when it comes to a real nuclear attack, they cannot afford to fail even once. So they will continue to do their work every day of every week, Shannon.
And we are grateful for that. Jonathan Hunt, thank you very much.
So meanwhile, the Trump administration saying that it believes China is being productive where North Korea is concerned. This amid discussions between Washington and Beijing on the best way to rein in the rogue regime. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley saying that China is trying to get Kim Jong-un to stop nuclear and ballistic missile testing when she said this.
China is doing back-channel networking with North Korea in a way that's getting them to try and stop the nuclear testing. So we believe that they are being productive. We do think that they're trying to counter what is happening now, and they have the lay of the land.
Well, she also says the U.S. and China are talking about stronger sanctions against North Korea in response to the ballistic missile launch just last weekend. Interesting choice of word. Back channel.
Exactly.
China's back channeling North Korea in the context of all of this now.
You think it was subliminal? I don't know, but they are doing it. And I mean, it's good news because China apparently has been resistant to some of the UN actions we wanted to take. So the fact that it sounds like we're working together is a good thing when it comes to North Korea. All right. Well, the news is rolling this morning. New details pouring in after terror strikes in the heart of Afghanistan. More than 300 people injured. We're told at least 80 dead in an area surrounded by worldwide embassies. It's supposed to be a safe zone.
Just awful pictures coming in on that, Shannon. You're right. Defunding Planned Parenthood. It's been a Republican rally cry for years. And now there's a new report that shows exactly what the organization has been up to as Republicans in Congress move one step closer to their goal.
I don't want my money, my tax dollars, supporting abortion and murder. We should be adults to take care of the responsibilities, men and women.
It is 9:31 here in New York now. More now on the 5th day of Ramadan. So far, this month has been deadly. More on the devastating bombing attack in Afghanistan. No claim of responsibility. At least 80 are dead. Hundreds are injured. Connor Powell live in Jerusalem, and you know the area well in Kabul. Tell us about that and whether or not this was an inside job, Connor.
Yeah, Bill, this was an intersection where this massive explosion went off that anyone who's been in Kabul for any period of time has gone through it many, many times. It's the main entrance to the so-called green zone where all the embassies, the presidential palace is located. This is really the main area. And it's also the last checkpoint before you get into it. And there's a series of checkpoints getting to this spot where this huge bomb went off that this truck would have had to have gotten through. And Afghan security forces and U.S. commanders are sort of hailing the Afghans for stopping this vehicle before it got into the green zone. But the real question is, how did it get to this point? Well, Afghan security forces are saying that it was a large tanker-like truck that was packed with explosives, such a big blast that left about a 13-foot deep hole in this concrete area, this main road, this main entrance into the green zone. It is a gigantic blast, and it is very unlikely that this vehicle got to that spot without getting through several checkpoints with somebody turning a blind eye.
Well,
Bill.
You have to think this is probably the second most secure place in the country next to the air base at Kabul, north of town. President Trump is reviewing the strategy in Afghanistan. Would more U.S. forces make a difference, Connor?
Bill, there's about 8,000 or so U.S. troops there, and maybe another 1,000 or so foreign troops helping out, advising and doing counterterrorism operations. The White House is reportedly discussing a plan to send maybe another 5,000. And talking to people who are dealing on this issue and trying to figure out what they would do there, where they would be, the real question is, what are these U.S. troops doing? If they're just there to sort of do some more training at the highest levels with generals and command staffs, it's not going to do much. The people who are pushing for more troops, who tend to be from the Pentagon are saying they need to be in there training troops at the lowest levels, at the company level, at the battalion level, to be with Afghan troops who are on the front lines fighting. If they're just going to go there and talk to generals, it's not going to do much of a difference.
Connor Powell, thank you from the Middle East Bureau. More on that devastating attack coming up when we get more details. Thank you, sir.
Sean Spicer returned to the White House podium for the first time in 2 weeks, and reporters did not miss a beat, going head-to-head with him over the president and his attacks on what he calls fake news.
Absolutely, Jim. I'll give you an example. Please. Sure. Friday, the president was having a great discussion at the G7, and someone from the BBC and ultimately an incoming reporter from the New York Times retweeted that the president was being rude by disrespecting the Italian prime minister. And yet, the president did a great job at NATO.
You're making something out of one tweet instead of the.
But again, you guys defend your mistakes like that. With all due respect, I was asked to give an example, and I did it.
You get more prominence than anybody ever.
I gave an answer to Jim. What I'm telling you is that the reason that the president is frustrated is because there's a perpetuation of false narratives, a use of unnamed sources over and over again about things that are happening that don't ultimately happen, and I think that is troubling.
Brad Blakeman is the former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush, and Fox News contributor, radio talk show host Richard Fowler. Good to see you both this morning, gentlemen.
It's good to be here, Shannon.
Richard, I want to ask you, who do you think was itching more to get back into that podium in the press briefing room, Spicy or the reporters?
I think the reporters were edgy to get in that briefing room. I think Sean Spicer wanted to wear a hard hat and sort of hide here. And here's the thing. Being a press secretary, Shannon, is not easy. We could talk to our colleague, Dana Perino, who talked about the struggles of, one, maintaining trust with the press and also upholding the position of the White House. And doing those things at the same time are very, very, very difficult. And I think what we see here from Sean Spicer is he seems to be more concerned that the president's pushing him to sort of maintain the White House position while diminishing trust with the reporters that cover this president each and every day.
Yeah, and Brad, he would say that they've diminished trust with him. I mean, they talk about false narratives, unnamed sources, constant leaks. Spicer said things that never actually happened that you're writing about as if they are. It's clear that they have some complaints of their own.
There's no doubt about it, but how do you face a press corps, like you say, who makes accusations, yet they don't tell you who the named sources are? They won't tell you what the background is. They just make these accusations drip by drip by drip. It's very hard for the White House to even answer a question when you don't have the backup for the allegations that are being made by a hostile press corps. So I think it's gone way beyond adversarial. I think they're at war now, but there is no surrender from the White House. If they think that's coming, it's not. And John Spicer and his team and the president are going to do their jobs as they see fit, because that's what they're required to do. And the press is just going to have to like it.
Well, Richard, where do we go? Where is the line on this unnamed sources and leaks? We know it is often critical to breaking big stories and important news that the American people have a right to know. But has the line been crossed here? As you know, we're talking about potential felony charges against people if they're caught leaking some of this information. I mean, we're talking about national security threats and those kinds of things. Can you understand the frustration from the White House on that point?
There's no question I understand the frustration of this White House. He has a leak problem. I've called it the leakapalooza that he has at this White House. But that comes down to President Trump being able to manage his White House. He is a businessman. He is a billionaire. Now it is time for this president to lead. He has been talking about leaks, Shannon, since day one of this administration. We're on now day 140, and he's still talking about leaks, and they haven't brought one leaker to justice. They haven't found one leaker. So this White House has to do two things here. Two tracks. One, they've got to find a way to push their agenda forward. Actually, three tracks. The second thing they've got to do is they've got to deal with the leakers. And the third thing, which seems to be happening now, is the president is probably going to continue to shake up his communications team to help him get in front of it. We saw yesterday the comms director resign. I see more resignations to come, because what's happening here is they're not getting in front of these leaks with providing the real facts of the story. They say fake news, fake news, fake news. Well, they don't say this is a leak and this leak is false. Here are the real facts. And that's problematic for this White House.
We know this is one of the main contentions that the president had with the former FBI director James Comey, is because these leaks aren't necessarily all coming from the White House. A lot of them are coming from the intelligence community, and he was mad that there wasn't being more done to investigate those.
Another reason why he needed to go. But now, as the president has said, he's tasked his attorney general, and I'm sure he'll task the new FBI director, with the pledge of finding leakers, because right now that is the only crime that has been committed that we know of. The allegations of the leakers pales in comparison to the national security damage that's been done by leakers, who I will tell you are probably not political appointees. They are institutional career people who are doing this. And that's why, Richard, it's so very hard to find them. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't. And they can be found if proper resources are given. And thank you, Richard, for saying that the leakers should be found, because a lot of Democrats absolutely are taking the other position that somehow these people are patriots. They're criminals.
All right, well, maybe you guys can agree on that. And we're out of time, but listen, if you haven't trademarked Leakapalooza, we might have to start a hashtag on that.
I'm running to the trademark office right now, Shannon, right now as we speak.
Brad and Richard, good to see you both. Thank you.
On it, Richard. You can do it, my man. President Trump's tweets get a lot of attention around the world. You know that. One sent around midnight last night has many buzzing and a bit puzzled. Here it is. Despite the constant negative press, Covfefe. It quickly became the top trender on Twitter and Facebook. It was removed a few hours later. The president earlier today sent this out. Who can figure out the true meaning of Covfefe? Enjoy, he says. This was my wild guess, Shannon. A dessert served in Brussels.
Oh, I like that. You
like
have
that
your
with
own
toast?
theory.
Well, I know, butter, a little cappuccino, you know, might be nice.
Covfefe. I don't know. It maybe sounds like sort of Italian.
Oh, do you think it's Covfefe?
I don't know. We're not even sure the
Or is it
pronunciation,
Covfefe?
much less what it is. But I like your theory about the dessert. We'll stay tuned.
It's delicious.
He's had it. He knows. All right. Well, Rush Limbaugh says he knows what's holding up Republicans in Congress.
So the Republican Party, which is ostensibly the party of the president, and they owe their majority to him, particularly the Senate, are roadblocking Donald Trump more than the Democrats are.
It is no secret that Republicans and President Trump need a legislative win. We're going to tell you what the president is saying this morning about his two biggest proposals in Congress.
Also, new video here showing one top Republican explaining why he thinks Democrats do not actually want an investigation on Russia. Watch.
They've tried to destroy this Russian investigation. They've never been serious about it. And one of the great things now that I've stepped aside from this Russian investigation, I can actually say what I want to say. The Democrats don't want an investigation on Russia. They want an independent commission. Why do they want an independent commission? Because they want to continue the narrative that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are best friends, and that's the only reason why he won, because Hillary Clinton could have never lost on her own, so it had to be someone else's fault.
So this is very interesting video. Just released, Intelligence Chair Devin Nunes out of California, Republican, claiming that Democrats are unhappy with the congressional investigation into Russia's meddling because it will not come to the conclusion that they desire. The LA Times reporting that comment happened at a private dinner last month, a day after Nunes recused himself from the investigation. And he said in that meeting that go ahead and report it. This is what he believes. Mark Thiessen, columnist for the Washington Post, fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and a Fox News contributor. Mark, good morning to you. So,
good morning, Bill. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Nunes and his position is quite clear. I mean, he states it there. Put Trump with Putin and you've got a winner. What do you think of his comments, given the profile that he has on a story like this?
Sure. Well, I mean, since he made those comments, there actually has been an independent special counsel appointed by the Trump Justice Department by Rosenstein. And so that really takes it out of the hands of the Democrats at this point. There's going to be an independent investigation. They can't really politicize it anymore because there's an investigation going on. And I think that's good. That's good for the Republican Party at this point because they can get back to doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is legislating.
Well, here
instead of obsessing about Russia.
Here then is the Democratic response. This is Eric Swalwell. He's from California as well. When he said this, by the way, he's also on the Intelligence Committee of the House.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think Republicans and Democrats, because Republicans are on my bill as well, care about the future of our elections. And if we don't have free and fair elections, what do we have in this country? So I hope both parties can put aside politics and just get to the bottom of what happened.
I think everybody wants an answer. I think you'd agree with that. But
yeah,
when he says free and fair, that the suggestion in that answer is that the election was not fair, Mark.
Yes, because Vladimir Putin told Hillary Clinton not to go to Wisconsin and Michigan. That's what happened, right? I mean, come on. This is the problem with the Russia probe, is that the Democrats are trying to use it to delegitimize Trump. We all, Republicans and Democrats, know that Russia tried to interfere in our elections, and we want to get to the bottom of it so that we can ensure that our elections are free and fair and without foreign interference. That should be a bipartisan goal. It's being undermined by the fact that they're constantly trying to use it to delegitimize Donald Trump. But the true reality is, again, we've got an independent investigation now. We've got somebody who everybody agrees is going to do it fairly in Bob Mueller. So let's move on. Let's start legislating. Let's start doing the people's business. People in the countryside are absolutely sick and tired of hearing about Russia, Russia, Russia every day, when what they want to hear about is we passed tax reform. We passed health care reform. We passed bills to deal with opioids. We passed school choice. We passed things that are going to improve their lives. They're sick and tired of Washington wrapping itself around its axle, talking about Russia, Russia, Russia all the time. Can we walk and chew gum at the same time?
Well, anecdotally, last weekend and the week before that, I was in Ohio, and nobody asked me about Russia. So point taken.
Exactly.
Now, Carter Page says he wants to testify, and apparently Democrats are not moving forward with that. Well, what do you make of the movements of Carter Page, a guy who was not paid? To me, he looked like he was looking for a job on the Trump team, did not get one, and was later forced to step aside in September of last year. And as I ask you that, in the vein of Robert Mueller and his investigation, which by all accounts seems to be moving forward at a pretty quick pace at the moment,
sure.
Does Robert Mueller tell Carter Page, don't testify, just sit down for now? Or are Democrats really not interested in what he has to say?
I think we should, the Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill should just take their cue from Bob Mueller. And if he doesn't want people to testify, then they should not testify. Carter Page, by the way, he's such a junior ranger, he never even met Donald Trump. I mean, he's the key linchpin to the Russia conspiracy to coordinate with Vladimir Putin. He never even met with Donald Trump. He was an outside advisor who had no influence and didn't get a job in the administration. So this is a completely peripheral figure, not only to government today, but to the Trump campaign. Why are we expending any energy on Carter Page? Let Bob Mueller do his job. Listen to him, defer to him. He's an independent guy. Everybody agrees that he's going to come to a purely an objective conclusion and go back to work.
There's that. Thank you, Mark. Mark Thiessen there in Washington.
All right, take care, Bill.
Talk to you real soon. Shannon, what's next?
Well, a possible shakeup in the mainstream media. CBS Evening News anchor Scott Pelley could be on his way out. We're going to look at why and what it means to the landscape.
Also, the comedian Kathy Griffin facing massive backlash over her photo with a bloody mask of President Trump. Howard Kurtz breaks that down next.
I understand how it offends people. It wasn't funny. I get it. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career. I will continue. I ask your forgiveness. I sincerely apologize. I am just now seeing the reaction of these images. I'm a comic. I crossed the line. I moved the line. Then I crossed it. I went way too far.
Well, comedian Kathy Griffin apologizing after a photo of her holding the bloody, severed head, a mock-up of the president, drew criticism from just about everyone. Howard Kurtz is the host of Media Buzz and a Fox News media analyst. All right, Howard, I've watched her apology several times. To me, it does seem genuine. I don't know how she didn't expect this kind of reaction, but what do you make of the fallout now?
Well, first of all, what Kathy Griffin did was so beyond the pale, so beyond any standard of human decency that is really hard to fathom. And this isn't a one-line bad joke that she blurted out. I mean, this was premeditated. She participated in a photo shoot, and she's just now getting that people might be offended by it. Even in an era, Shannon, when so many celebrities feel free to make tasteless jokes and otherwise bash Donald Trump, and most of the mainstream media shrugs, this went so far that it is causing a severe backlash.
I mean, yeah, when you have Chelsea Clinton, no fan of Donald Trump, tweeting out that it's vile and wrong. It's never funny to joke about killing a president. There were some tweets out there from the U.S. Secret Service that, didn't address it directly, but say, hey, we keep an eye on everybody that we're protecting. So folks wonder whether she may get a phone call or not. The president has tweeted as well, saying this: Kathy Griffin should be ashamed of herself. My children, especially my 11-year-old son, Barron, are having a hard time with this. Sick. What do you think will happen to her professionally, if anything?
Well, it's a really interesting question because CNN, which of course puts her on with this big extravaganza every New Year's Eve with Anderson Cooper, has had an unaccountably tepid reaction, putting out a statement that does criticize what Kathy Griffin did, but saying, well, we are evaluating whether to keep her on this New Year's Eve special. Now, if Kathy Griffin, I guarantee you, had held up a bloody mask for the head of any other president, there is no way that CNN would want to put her next to Anderson Cooper for that big night at the end of the year. She would be gone. I think what CNN's really saying is we're going to watch the reaction and see if this blows over.
Yeah, I mean, we know that comedians push the edge. That's what they do. They push the envelope, and part of what they do is making a mockery, going too far. She admits she went too far this time. But do you think there's a double standard? You mentioned, had this been another president, the reaction may have been swift and a lot more harsh.
Yeah, no, I give comedians a pretty wide berth. Sometimes they're going to insult people, go too far. I get that. But, you know, again, the idea that she would spend this time in this photo shoot and not think it was going to cause this explosion, I think speaks to a mindset among the Hollywood set that it really is possible to say or do just about anything when it comes to Donald Trump, and you're going to get high fives. In this case, obviously, even Kathy Griffin now realizes what a horrible mistake this was.
Yeah, and there's some audio, it appears, during that photo shoot that seems to suggest she knew there was going to be trouble. All right, Howard Kurtz, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Dare we suggest the act was intentional to pose? The apology came after she felt the reaction on behalf of the public. And it was fierce. And as you point out, when you lose Chelsea Clinton, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And I didn't hear in there
You
an
have
apology.
gone well over the line.
I didn't hear an apology to the president. I heard an apology for doing it. I'm not sure it was directed exactly at him.
Well, a lot of reaction on that. A lot of reaction on this, Shannon. The president's about to make news on the Paris Climate Accord. This will be a big deal. Will the U.S. stay or go? We'll find out soon. New developments on the bomber in the Manchester massacre. What we now know about his deadly plot.